Okay, very good. Senator Lee, do you want to ask a few more questions and then I could close out? I wanted to put on the record a statement for the record by Jennifer Settlemeyer, the Senior Director at March of Dimes, about the impact of consolidation on baby formula. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Contreras, I'd like to turn to you next, if that's all right. I'd like to start by asking you, how would you grade the FDA's response to the current baby formula shortage?
We were actually, really critical of their response. We do a lot of engagement with the FDA because of the nature of the work that we do with ensuring consumer product safety, ensuring access to safe drugs. And, we do a lot of work to raise awareness of, to raise awareness for consumers of the dangers of purchasing counterfeit drugs online. And so when we were alerted about the situation and saw this, we wanted to make sure that we were fair and vocal, that, the FDA is likely, understaffed, under-resourced, and experiencing a lot. I know that many of the staff members at the FDA were already working, 2 and 3 job roles within the agency. So we've been asking a lot of them lately. And so I think that
I mean, I know it takes a lot of work to destroy that many containers of European formula. I mean, that's got to be exhausting, right?
Well, to be fair, they were imported illegally. So now if again, like our organization, has the fraud.org platform, so we would, typically ask consumers to reply because they're at risk, right? We don't know specifically
Are they
what quality mandates are
are people
there.
who consume European formulas regulated heavily by European regulatory agencies, are they less or more at risk than those parents unable to procure formula as a result of the shortage?
Right, correct. So I'm not making a comment on that. What I'm saying is that it raises the risk of the potential of bad actors online that are selling to consumers, like, for example, these companies they're sort of middlemen, right? Bringing the foreign infant formula to people, and consumers, want to have it, and should, but we want to raise awareness of that risk, that they should be aware that this didn't go through FDA review, and you never can tell. And even with, a consumer product, where do they go for complaints of, adverse events from consuming a product that was contaminated?
Right.
Right. So then who gets involved? So even if it does come in, then we have to have a process to track those, where do I complain to the company for the
You
quality
have
that I
any
wasn't pleased
you have,
with?
you have any thoughts on what we could do to reform the FDA to prevent this in the future? And in asking that, it makes me a little nervous even raising it, because I'm very reluctant, frankly, to give more money and any amount of deference to the same people who messed this up to begin with. I'm not sure what would lead us to believe that would lead to a better outcome next time. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, my only thought is that, right now food safety is really largely broken up into 3 areas, 3 different jurisdictions, right? CDC, USDA, FDA. And if we had potentially a single agency to oversee it, or a single office, dedicated to this, and I think that, yeah, it's fair. It's kind of, not a great argument, right, to say that we need to, you know, provide more funding, but there just isn't enough capacity, I think, in the country. And we see this in the work that we do with our cannabis products and CBD products. We see Wild West marketplaces go on without, without the FDA just doesn't have the capacity to do
Right.
the regulation it needs to do.
Yeah, I guess what I'm reacting to there is the fact that they do have the capacity to destroy European regulated formula at a time when there's a shortage. And they do have enough capacity and human resources to impose and enforce these regulations in a way that creates the shortage. It just makes me wonder about their judgment. Ms. Carney, in your expert opinion, is it really necessary for the FDA to treat infant formula for babies who are under 6 months differently than it does treat other food products? And what problems could this cause by doing it this way?
Thank you, Senator Lee. I think that we need to look at infant formula definitely as food. It's not medicine. It can be therapeutic, but the main thing I feel like what is needed at FDA is for somebody to provide oversight that is qualified in food and nutrition with an expertise in that area. And not someone that knows medications and drugs. That's another whole issue. I don't know about any kind of problems if we, if we would change things, but I do know that somebody with an expertise in that area should be the one that has oversight over the products that we use. And, looking at European formulas, we don't know, the saying that they're safe, that's not science-based that I know of. I would like for someone with a food nutrition background to look at that and say, oh yeah, let's just import all the baby formulas in Europe or wherever they're coming from so that we have more supply. I'm a little hesitant to say that without somebody's oversight on those kinds of products.
Yeah, I understand the reluctance. I also understand that we're in the midst of a shortage that's significant, that poses nothing short of a medical emergency for many American babies and families. And it goes beyond that. I have to assume that this also spills over. There's some overlap between those companies that produce infant formula in the United States and those companies that produce medically necessary diet materials, such as that must be consumed by patients suffering from PKU. I can only imagine that this infant formula shortage must exacerbate that problem. And these medically necessary diets, even in the absence of a shortage like this, are estimated to cost in excess of 8 times what someone would pay for normal food. And so that has me worried as well. Mr. Lynn, when government policies encourage market concentration, particularly market concentration on this scale, is there really much the market can do to fight it when government forces are creating the market concentration?
Markets don't fight concentration. People fight concentration, Senator. So if,
Sure,
yeah,
but it's
okay.
people responding to market force.
I'd say that they're responding to market structures that are established by the government. I actually think there's a lot of agreement here among all of us as we see a real combination of. I think we fundamentally agree that these problems were caused by bad government regulation. I'm focusing on the overthrow of traditional anti-monopoly law by people within government 40 years ago. But I'm not saying that, the FDA has acted perfectly here or even wisely in most respects. But I think that we have an opportunity, all of us, to work together to deal with this problem and to deal with all of these problems together. It's like I held up that publication from 2002 before because, Senator Cruz was talking about just, the need, we have foresaw some of these problems. We foresee a lot more problems. We don't want to be back here talking about other crises similar to this. We can take the steps together to address this systemic problem that, as we see in just about every industrial system on which we depend.
Right. Does the WIC program encourage market concentration? And to the extent that it does, should states in their WIC offerings be allowed to pursue multi-source contracts rather than being limited as they currently are to sole source, single source contracts? So their supply chains aren't, dependent on a single producer.
Yes, no, and we strongly, as an organization, we strongly encourage the updating of procurement policy to promote competition. This is something that should be done at every level of government.
Thank you. Mr. Lincecum, if I'm not mistaken, Congress passed the law that created the WIC program back in 1972. You have any idea what the market formula looked like prior to that program's creation?
It was a much different market, as you can imagine, much smaller, but at the same time, there was a similar, not similar level, but there was some concentration as well back then. I think one of the reasons for that, as I mentioned before, is that we've been protecting the dairy market in the United States for going on a century now. There's not much of a free market in dairy and including in formula. But I think it is nice to see agreement. I was pleased to read Chair Klobuchar's letter to Secretary Vilsack also about WIC. I mean, I think we all understand that WIC is a problem in this case. Merits of the program itself, intention of the program itself aside, it is doing a lot of the driving the concentration, and a simple expansion of the kind of a voucherization of that would certainly help.
Right. Ms. Contreras, the Biden administration reports that it has secured commitments to bring in 127.5 million bottles of formula. How much of this commitment has physically arrived in the United States and has been made available to Americans for purchase in retail stores? Any idea?
Unfortunately, I don't. That's outside of my expertise.
Okay. Apparently that number is 1.5 million. Only 1.5 million of those bottles have been made available so far, and that's according to the information from the White House itself. Now, American babies consume more than 63 million bottles of formula per week. And so based on that statistic, the number that we got from the White House, where the White House, the Biden administration has brought in 1.5 million bottles of formula, it seems to me that like we haven't even begun to address the formula shortage that we're facing. And according to recent reporting by Data Assembly, the United States is facing a 74% shortage nationwide. That means 47 million bottles of formula unavailable for American families every week, short of what we can provide. So the Biden administration hasn't even brought in enough formula to meet the needs of American families for even a single day. So we really need to open up the floodgates and to open up the floodgates to safe foreign-made formula so that American babies don't go hungry. The Formula Act does that. I still haven't heard a single substantive critique of it that would warrant not passing it, because every day that goes by without passing it, we prolong this shortage, a shortage that the White House really has not done anything but pay lip service toward resolving. This would resolve it. Ms. Carney, the European Union is the largest exporter of infant formula in the world. The formula produced there in the European Union is nutritionally similar to, and in some cases, according to a number of experts, qualitatively better than U.S. formula. If it's good enough for babies in the United Kingdom, in France, and Switzerland, why isn't it good enough for American babies? So I'd ask, who's at greater risk here? Is it the French baby drinking European formula, or the American baby going hungry?
Thank you. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that exactly, but I will say as long as we can look at these formulas and they appear to us to be nutritionally sound and safe, I think that opening up the market is definitely something we need to do. We do have to focus. I appreciate what you said. We have a formula shortage every single day in this country, and we hear a lot of talk, but down in the weeds where I am working, we have mothers calling, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? And I think as long as they have some medical guidance, all formulas are not the same as far as nutritional content and components. The nutritional analysis can be different. For instance, in my testimony, I referred to preterm infants. There is preterm infant formula that meets the needs for preterm infants. There's also term formula. There's formula that meets the needs, for instance, the children with PKU or other genetic disorders. So we can't just willy-nilly just let formula be out there and mothers and babies picking their own formula. As long as there's some medical guidance to say, oh, this is a healthy term baby, you can get this formula, or your child has a genetic disorder, this is the kind of formula you need. Mothers and families and parents, they need guidance. So I don't have a problem with European formulas as long as we look at it and say this formula is for this population and this other formula is for another population.
And I assume it's fair to conclude that European regulators do in fact inspect European formula manufacturers.
I would assume so too. I don't know for sure, but surely they do if they're giving it to their infants in those countries.
Do you have, or are you aware of?
Yeah.
You're aware of any evidence suggesting that American babies would react differently to European formula than European babies do?
If the ingredients are comparable, I don't see why we would, expect babies to respond differently. I would want to see the nutrient composition, but no, I think that would be assumed.
Yeah, it makes sense to me then that given the similarities both in the structure and composition of European formulas, given the similarities in the way European formula manufacturers are regulated, and given the similarities between European babies, American babies, and all babies all over the world, everywhere, who have the same types of systems in place. They react to formula regardless of which continent they happen to have been born on. It would make
I will say that we like our formulas to have iron in them. Most of our formulas have iron, a significant amount that meet the nutritional needs of babies. And some formulas are lower in calories. So, it would just take some adjustments to utilize these formulas,
Sure.
But I think it could be done.
Adjustments are much better than going without. That's why it makes no sense to destroy European formula while American babies are going hungry. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Lee. I was thinking about our short on